I want to proclaim that I never could do the show stoned. I could listen to the radio stoned, but there's just too much happening. There were a number of on-air people that could not go on air without being stoned.
True. There were also people who did the creative process.
Yes, absolutely.
On a variety of organic and other chemicals.
That's right. That's just not weed. We're talking mescaline, maybe some acid. Don't mention Halifax.
Peyote.
Peyote, yeah.
Peyote.
We were young and strong,
Yes.
we were able to tolerate a variety of mind-bending substances and get away with it.
I mean,
all right, so
Azort Starbolt was created out of someone's mind on drugs.
yes, indeed, as was Firesign Theater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
acid.
as was Cheech and Chong.
So
So we were
Wait
fulfilling
a minute. Cheech and
the,
Chong did drugs?
Dave's not here. And speaking of crazy things, but let's run through a few of those. I remember being in my office down the hall, and Greeno came in hysterically laughing. I said, "What's going on with you?" And he said, "I just went into Studio B and overrode the Mal and Al show." And they were, at the time, they were in, this is on FM too,
Yeah.
and at the time they were in some kind of long-winded discussion, the stoners talking to each other, and I had connected, they would know that they were overridden because they'd hear their voice only their voice in their headphones, but he overrode it, and then it connected it up to a radio. And had gone through the whole radio dial in Ottawa and started listening to other stations. And so he sampled this and he sampled that, and apparently it was something like 5 minutes that he had taken them off the air. And I thought, my God, that's brilliant. That'd be able to show the listeners that the other stations on the dial were crap. And CKCU was quite unique. He said, unfortunately, when I went back to CKCU, they were still talking.
Well, if we're going to talk crazy, a couple things one that comes to mind was I came into work one day. I came into the Unicenter. I go back to the elevator. I push the button, I wait. The elevator door opens. My office is in the elevator. What the hell? So
I think
I
you
looked
said,
at
what
it.
the fuck is going on?
But being the good sport I am, I went, sat down behind the desk, and went up and down on the elevator. People would come in, and I'd be right, yes, can I help you? That was a great day.
Were we on FM when we used to have some interesting listeners? One fellow by the name of Larry, who resided at the Royal Ottawa Hospital, a psychiatric hospital, who just, affectionately became known as Crazy Larry. And Larry got out of the Royal Ottawa one evening or one afternoon, didn't know quite how. He walked into Artistic License, which was on the air. It was an arts program, a discussion program. The heretofore mentioned Robin Matthews was on the air with, I don't know what they were talking Canadian nationalism and publishing and so on. Larry sat down and began interviewing Robin Matthews. And of course the questions were just right from outer space, and Robin's getting more and more pissed off and finally stormed out of the studio and right up to his office at the Arts Tower, phoned a complaint into the CRTC, and began writing letters to the president. And so when I heard about this, I phoned him up and I said, Robin, this is what happened. This crazy guy escaped from a psychiatrist. And of course, Robin's going, yeah, right. I'm still writing the command. It took me a good half hour on the phone to persuade him that this really was a crazy man who was in our radio station. Well, but he wasn't the only crazy one.
Well, there was a lot of crazy things that happened around the station among the staff. I remember a anniversary party where I think you were, Randy, you were a performer, you were a lead singer, and I think Shooty was on guitar, and Herc might have been on drums or something of the sort. And at that,
God save the Queen.
At that, yeah. So it would be about 77.
Bollocks, yes.
So at one, yeah, exactly. And so at one point, our resident programmer for poetry theft of fire, he got a little rambunctious and wanted to take on our production manager Chuck Rubin for some reason. And I remember there was a interlude outside of the party, and Randy confronted this programmer and said, if you want to punch somebody, punch me. So he did.
He did.
Gave Randy
Had
a
nice
black eye.
black eye.
Yeah. And the other thing with Ruben, I remember also being in the car with of Jeff Green, and we were heading just away from the Uni Center, and for some ridiculous reason, Ruben was in the back seat, standing up. It was very crowded. He had a convertible Mustang, and Jeff slammed on the brakes, and the next thing I noticed that Ruben was on the hood of the car, bleeding from the nose. And I thought, what the hell just happened there? Why did he do that? I don't know why Ruben was always victimized. I once took him out.
Some people are just victims.
Well, I took him out to a concert, and we were drinking so on and so on. And I took him to a Chinese restaurant and ordered all this food. I decided to leave.
Stiffed him with...
And they called the police.
On Ruben.
And he had to leave his watch, Chinese watch.
Chinese.
And I had to go back and claim it because I remember coming in on Monday and he said, oh, stay away from Ruben. He's really gunning for you. He's really angry at you. And speaking of angry, Mr. Williams, you had a entretien with the program director at one point. See you on the loading dock.
Oh, fuck.
What was that about?
I bet you can't even remember what it was about, or can you?
It had to do with authority and
noblesse oblige.
Robbie, had a pretty strong opinions about things, and
unlike you.
No, and it just he didn't like some decision that I made. Couldn't tell you what it was, but he was so mad. I walked into the station and he walked by me and he put his shoulder into me, and I said, "Really?" I said, "You want to go?" I said, "The loading dock. I'll be there in 10 minutes." And
first, I have to get my furniture out of the
first, I have to get my furniture out of the elevator. Yeah, that was
wow.
Well, but when I first became station manager, Derek Nicholson and Tab McFetridge came into my office to tell me how to run the radio station and how I was going too far and blah blah blah. Wouldn't listen, and I came across my desk, grabbed Tab McFetridge by the collar, pushed them out into the hallway up against the wall by the bathroom, and just said, "And don't come back."
and by the way, it was Taft McFedridge that I was trying to get out of the station.
Yeah, they keep coming back.
He went.
I'm going to take us in a slightly different direction just for a second, because something that Randy instituted, and I don't even know if it still exists, but
physical confrontation.
No, the awards night.
Oh yes,
we have to talk about awards night because it was a great idea. Let's recognize people who do above and beyond in their contribution to the station, to programming, and so on. And those award nights became they were legendary. Eric Dormer drove a motorcycle into one of them, into the party. There was the infamous World of Tomorrow Punch.
Always.
And the first year, we had a basic recipe. Randy and I used to make this large punch bowl, and we cut up a bunch of fruit.
Take a shopping cart to the liquor control.
Poured liquor in, and as we were chopping up the fruit and whatever else, Randy cut himself and bled into the punch.
I drank that punch.
Exactly. And so every year thereafter, we cut our fingers and bled into the punch bowl.
And someone brought a bottle of wood alcohol from somewhere in the science department. First year we had a big bottle of maybe it was just plain ethyl alcohol. I can't remember which is poisonous and which isn't, but it was pure alcohol. And
there were many things done on the World of Tomorrow Punch.
I want to say one thing about Eric Dormer. The night that wasn't the night we went on air, but we had a big dinner downtown for the executive. We had a big celebratory dinner. I can't remember which restaurant.
Most of us can't remember that night at all.
It was, and we had so much fun. And afterwards, we went back to the radio station, and it had been snowing. It was slushy, and Eric fell on his knees before the Arts Tower, and just bowed before the tower and the red light beaming on top. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that image for the
funny
rest
you
of my
mentioned
life.
the Arts Tower, because I when I came on campus today, and I hadn't been on campus for a long time, I looked up and I said, it's much smaller than I remember it. It's really not
It
that
is.
tall anymore.
Dave Schutte should be recognized for that particular contribution
The
to
93.1.
the 93.1 radio dial. That was a massive effort of it was organizational genius.
You're absolutely right. I skipped over that for some reason, not deliberately, but I remember getting the Ottawa Citizen, as you subscribed to it, and picking up the paper on the Saturday,
November 15th, yeah.
and being gobsmacked by the fact that this tower, and I didn't know anything about the planning. Maybe you know more about it. And there was this 93.1 on the Arts Tower, and I was rocked. I freaked out. My God, what a brilliant idea.
Schutte had the drawings room by room by room. We had to phone every single person that was in those offices, get permission to go in.
Did anybody say no?
We had to change sides, as I recall.
Lock picking was.
but it was, he organized a crew to go in and do that. I guess it was the day of the 14th, with everything else that was going on.
It was unbelievable
that we had a group that accomplished that. There's an iconic image, and I'm so happy to see that it's on the window in Studio A, as a reminder of that very first day of our
And for
broadcast.
that alone, he should be in the CKCU-FM Hall of Fame.
He is. And
are we getting to the Hall of Shame anytime soon?
Not forgetting the night that Dave Schutte stood on the deck of the house that Mal and I were renting in Wakefield, and stood as a statue for 4 hours.
Was that my bachelor party?
I think it was. It
We won't
rained,
talk about that.
And he stood there in the rain in the same position, and it went on and on for hours.
There were no drugs that night.
Unbelievable.
None.
However, there were drugs, or at least alcohol, and this story right here is testimonial to the persuasiveness of alcohol. One night, Craig and I, and it must be told, were down in the market. And we decided for some unbelievably stupid reason that the best thing that we should...
Well, wait a minute. Shea FM went on the air, took all of our best announcers, and began to, it really challenged our position on the dial as the music station and so on. And so you got to recognize that these were also our people. So there were connections to that station, strong connections.
Well, apparently Shea had this sort of laser-etched logo in a circular format, screwed into...
It was oval.
Yes, screwed into the front of the station's wall. We decided the best thing for us to do, and I was doing it on aesthetic reasons, because I just didn't like the logo. Perhaps you were more...
I thought we were going to do something else with the mirror.
And so we unscrewed that mirror, and we decided that would be the best thing to do.
Where did we get the tools? Were we using pocket knives
Actually,
or what?
why were we such tools is the question.
I don't know.
Actually. And we decided to kidnap the mirror.
We kidnapped the mirror.
Yes, exactly, with their logo on it, leaving this quite obvious barren spot on their outside wall. And then we went downstairs, put it in the backseat of your car.
Correct. Drove it to my apartment on Bell Street.
But at the time that we did that, we encountered a fellow CKCUer, which I think he discovered that we had actually committed that sort of crime.
Sort of.
And then we thought we were clear and free, and we drove it to your apartment. You put it under your bed as